The Pokemon Fort Wayne Regionals is still going on, and cheating is already being reported from the event. It never ends. It's so common right now. So this isn't as long as the recent posts we have seen about cheating and tournament official abuse and all that stuff. Let's see what's going on. I usually wouldn't make posts like this, but I think what I have to say about Fort Wayne's event must be heard. My round 1 opponent was stripped of his chances in a later match against Vaughn O'Brien through a blatant game state breaking lie. To explain, Vaughn playing Control and my former opponent playing Arceus Duraludon were in a match where Vaughn convinced my opponent the entire set that Duraludon VMAX Gmax pulverization does not hit through Miltank's Miracle Body, which is a game state breaking lie. I was told this after I caught back up with my opponent following a couple of rounds after Vaughn's victory. Vaughn even tried to tell my opponent he didn't know about the interaction, which is obviously a lie given his skill and time invested in the current meta. Also, if you don't know, then how are you able to convince your opponent throughout an entire match of the actual interaction? So this also just kind of looks like a really incriminating lie. Taking advantage of players like this should be punished. Vaughn has been accused of taking advantage of players in the past, so I'm forced to think this is no mistake. When I mentioned it in the end of day 1 tweet, I was immediately blocked, signaling that he is trying to flee any accountability. Now, we are getting people backing up this claim, and as mentioned, the player is notorious for doing this in the past, so it seems like it's mostly a rumbling going on in the event. It's kind of like the in-crowd of people that know, the sketchy or the more notorious players, but it seems like it's getting traction. However, both players are in the wrong because you call a judge if you don't understand a game interaction. That is why the judges are there, so you can raise your hand and go, "Judge," and that's it. And if the opponent tries to stop you, then you report that to the judge as a further violation. That, as I've kind of been covering, especially over the last couple of days, where it's like, wow, all of the cheating and all of the corrupt tournament organizers and everything going on Pokemon is hitting max. Like, we've never seen it this bad, but it's also been that way, where it's like, oh, it's never been this bad before. Next event gets even worse, next event gets even worse, next year gets even worse than that. We're definitely at a boiling point here, but the takeaway is pretty much everyone in the Pokemon community, especially competitive Pokemon community, is a scumbag, so you shouldn't trust them. And that's why it's on the player to call the judge and also be familiar with tournament procedure as well as the rules. It doesn't matter if this is your first event, it doesn't matter how much experience, you need to be familiar with the handbook, the rules, the terms, the conduct, especially when it comes to the specific game you're playing, and you need to be knowledgeable of the procedure that you're supposed to do, which is calling a judge if you're not sure of a rule. And there's even this cool thing to where if you disagree with a judge's ruling, because judges aren't perfect, they can't know every interaction between all of the cards in the game, you can escalate it to higher tier judges, and you can make sure that the ruling is correct. And that's kind of like another thing. We're seeing just like over 1,000 players in the TCG participating events. A lot of those people are going to be new to regionals or maybe even not that experienced Pokemon. They're just there for fun. Especially now that there's in-person events again after the couple of year lockout we had with COVID, and also TCG just kind of getting really super popular. And what bad actors do is they behave predatorily. They exploit this. They notice weakness inside of an opponent's play. Maybe they play insecure. Maybe they show frequent lack of basic game knowledge, and then because of that, it's a lot easier to exploit them for cheating, and that's kind of like what's happening here. But again, you need to know the rules and just call a judge for anything that could be going on, especially because the Pokemon community is so notorious at this. So let's see, good on you for calling this out. So a lot of people are like, yeah, this guy needs to be called out for it. It's amazing what awful tactics people will go to try and win at a card game like this right now. It's not right now. It's been going on for many years. Like in 2016, where on stream I was like, wow, Michael Pramwa is just straight stacking his deck, and the opponent is inexperienced and doesn't know how cut stacking works, so he's just getting the free ride on this one. And I call it out, people get mad at me, and I've been doing that. So yeah, of course cheating is going to get worse and worse, because the cheaters know that in VGC or TCG, they're immune, and the corrupt officials and Play Pokemon staff doesn't care, and there's nothing really pushing back. Without fail, it seems like I hear about some cheating by top players at every event. I mean, that's standard. You can go back to the very beginnings of regionals and TCG in Pokemon, but also MTG and Yu-Gi-Oh, where it's like, yeah, a lot of the best players end up getting caught as cheaters in some kind of way, and it happens at every event regardless. It happens at a lot of locals as well. People just behave poorly, and the best thing you can do is call this out. Maybe they get enough infractions, and then they get like significant amount of bans and potentially permabans and stuff like that. But that is the problem with Pokemon, that there's so many cheaters in Pokemon, especially the TCG, that they all cover for each other, that if one rats on the other, well then two more are going to rat on them for being a cheater as well, and they really can't call it out too much, except in like extreme cases or when it hits a tipping point where it's like, all right, you're cheating too much now. So yeah, if true, does this go against the spirit of the game rules? I was looking for the rules, and the thing is, just because there isn't an example here directly doesn't mean that it doesn't fall under that classification, because it's an example. And you can't have an example for everything, but this is definitely unsporting conduct, and we have major, characterized by behavior that displays a lack of respect or consideration for fair play or the enjoyment of others in attendance. And it depends on how hard you want to push these rules, but also in the Pokemon rules, and I showed this with what happened to Makani and why the head judge absolutely had a right to de-escalate his penalty. The rules are specifically stated to be guidelines, and you also have freedom as a judge or someone issuing a penalty to escalate or de-escalate the penalty as it appears, because yeah, you can't catch every potential situation. There's definitely going to be some in-between gray area rulings that come down into gameplay, and you also don't want to ban a player or kick someone out of the event that did nothing wrong, not even talking about Makani, but just on like procedural or accidentally cheated, but it's a kid's game and stuff kind of thing. So the tournament officials are generally encouraged to de-escalate penalties. So I mean, like, this is the lowest it should be, but there's also cases for just like straight up disqualification and severe. And another problem with rulings is that you start getting into he said, she said kind of thing. So major unsporting conduct is a game loss. And I think that's also what you do. You kind of report the first one as a game loss, and then with a major infraction being reported, if it happens again, then you have a lot more confidence in making a disqualification ruling if it keeps on happening, or like similar things kind of keep on happening. But there also is just like a severe disqualification for cheating. There is simply no place in Play Pokemon for those who choose to cheat to gain advantage over their opponent, and that's what this is. Lying about the interaction of cards to gain an advantage to get victory over the opponent. If this is a deliberate and provably deliberate act, then we also have disqualification. But again, he said, she said. And as much as I come down on the scum that is cheaters in a kid's game, I think you do need multiple like infractions of this to warrant a disqualification, because then there's also rules lawyering, which is cheating in its own, where the player can be like, he gave me the wrong ruling, disqualify him. So you can't kind of jump straight to that, again, unless you can actually prove intent and malice. So yeah, we have like the rulings here, and we also have like reports of what's going on as to what people say about it. And again, the victimized player did make a mistake by not calling over the judge, and then maybe also even having a warning issued to Vaughn if it does seem a little sketchy or something like that. We also have some replies. There's no reason to believe you at this point. Doesn't matter what I say, no one's willing to believe me. He never announced a legal attack with Duraludon VMAX against me. So try and be like, oh, it didn't matter anyway. But I mean, if I say, hey, can I attack you with this? And you say no, well, then it just really seems like a misplay if I put that Pokemon into attack when it has no legal ability to attack, and I'm trying to trust my opponent for being sporting. But sportsmanship doesn't exist in Pokemon. I mean, I've kind of proven that for at least 8 years now. And if we're going off of my personal experience at Regionals, it's over a decade of just having very little sporting interaction with people in Play Pokemon, but the judges don't do anything about it. TPCI is corrupt. Play Pokemon workers are corrupt as well. But I mean, like, see, it's one of those things where you can just kind of see someone's behavior really incriminate them, where, like, this is deflection and trying to also garner something like, no one's willing to believe me. Okay, but then why would you say he never, like, why would you try to downplay if you did misinform this player about his actions not even determining the outcome of the match? But we also do have to be careful about this kind of stuff, because everyone's scummy in Pokemon. There's a lot of clicks, there's a lot of in-crowds, and retroactive punishment is also not the way to do things. So we kind of see like, oh, people like this need to be held accountable, taking advantage of players like this should be punished. All right, cool. Now everyone, like, this needs to be aware. We need to have this awareness for the next event so players know to get familiar with the rules, to get familiar with calling judges and stuff, and then be able to have proper penalties assigned. Because if this is retroactively done, well, then that also sets the precedent that, oh, I don't like this player, he's doing too well, let's get him banned or let's get him punished or like a restriction from some kind of event. You can't set the precedent that, oh, you get enough likes on Twitter and then you can retroactively get someone punished now that there's like no evidence from any of the interactions at the actual event itself. However, when you look at it, it's kind of crazy. Like, all of these people accused of cheating or all of these cheaters inside of Pokemon, they always have high championship points. They always have a lot of top placements. And as we've seen in Pokemon, it usually leads to, not usually, it almost always leads to them like having a history of cheating or dishonest behavior and stuff like that. And that's also happening more and more inside of gaming, where it's like, seems like at least once a month, the new top ranked player in some kind of FPS or number one current streamer actually using aimbots and wall hacks and stuff. So there we go, guys. More cheating Pokemon. Is it even news at this point? Like, damn, water's wet. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.